Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Right on Crime podcast. My name is Britt Allen with Right on Crime, and I'm really excited about today's episode. I always am, but today we have somebody brand new joining us for the episode. It's Frank Russo, who is our new Georgia State Director. Hey, Frank.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just honored to be here in Austin. I appreciate that you all kept the heat we have in Atlanta, so it's a nice, cool 100 degrees outside today, right?
See, I'm always the first person to complain about Texas weather, but you are from what they call Hotlanta, so this actually probably feels like a beach vacation to you in a way.
Well, I feel like I'll be thrown out of the state if I say the words Hotlanta, but we do at the beach state like to keep the city and the air is beautifully humid at all times. So
oh my gosh.
If you have the hair like I do, you really don't have to worry about the challenges.
Our hair, we've talked a little bit earlier today, and we are just going on and on about our hair and how similar it is.
Yes, You know, I would say, listen, I was built for the humidity, and that's why I'm glad to be in Atlanta and happy to join you here in Texas.
Oh, well, I'm so glad that you joined us. So I want to jump right in. We have a lot to talk about. So I want to start off by talking about your background. You have a wide range of experience in your work and in your personal life. So just tell me a little bit about you, where you came from, and how you ended up at Right on Crime.
Absolutely. So I've had a really exciting career and really an incredible opportunity to work in the criminal justice space. And it all started back on Capitol Hill. So I began really at the Senate House Judiciary Committees in Congress, working with these issues, working with the people who every day have to handle the challenges of how do we keep our community safe, how we do it in an efficient way, and how do we make sure that the people around us believe in what we're doing. Because if the community is not invested, we're not successful. So I spent about 3 years on Capitol Hill working at those committees, and then I moved over to represent law enforcement directly. So I had the chance to work with prosecutors and sheriffs and police to hear about the challenges they face. And really what I took from that was they get a community that needs support too. And so we've transitioned that. And then I spent a few years in politics. And now here I am at your front door getting to help lead the project in Georgia. So I'm excited to talk about what we're going to do in Georgia, but also really about how my experience can make a difference in the state.
Oh, that's so awesome. So I want to go back to a little bit about your experience. Law enforcement, you've expressed to me, is something you're extremely passionate about. So I want to ask, in your time, you know, you've said that you do a lot of ride-alongs and whatnot, and you've really gotten to see the system firsthand. Is there a story that you can think of that like really sparked your passion for making the criminal justice system better?
Absolutely. And I think it comes to why I've done this work throughout my career. So just starting on Capitol Hill, it's exciting to work in an office and fill out legislation and have protesters yell at you all day. Unfortunately, it's a little bit more fun to get out in the community and see who you represent and what your responsibilities are there. So what made a difference to me is I was at the House Judiciary Committee, started as an intern, moved into being a law clerk. And really in that role, I got to take my first prison visit. First time going behind bars to see what the real challenges, not just for the folks who are incarcerated, but for the officers. It's its own community. And so I got to work with the folks there, learn about the programming that makes everybody in that community safe. Why does that matter? Because all the folks who come out of it, whether it's the patrol agents that work there and then when they return to their communities, or the innocent folks that work the shifts in the kitchen or anywhere else when they go home, and then obviously the incarcerated individuals when they return to their families, we want to make sure that all of those folks come back to a safe community. I got to see firsthand how that matters. What happens next? I get to go and join law enforcement, sit in courtrooms with prosecutors, take ride-alongs, and see that the real work happens at the community level. And we sometimes fail to remember that in the policy world.
Oh, I love that so much. Community-centric is like, that's number one. And I love that you were able to see that firsthand. I mean, I myself did an in-person prison visit, and I'd never been to one before in my life. And I know that changed my perspective on a lot, so I totally get it. I wanted to ask you also, so you are a nationally recognized expert when it comes to human trafficking. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I've had the opportunity to work with survivors, prosecutors, law enforcement we talked about throughout my career and help them through the process of how do we identify human trafficking? How do we get it out of our communities? It's one of the worst crimes known to man. We're talking about people here. I hate when there's numbers and statistics around trafficking. What we really care about are the people. And so during my time on Capitol Hill, during my time as an advocate, I've been able to sit with victims and survivors. And all of this work, by the way, needs to be survivor-led. What does the community not know? That survivors face more challenges than just the abuse. And we've got to find a way to stop that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's here in Texas, so it's outside of your state, but you did write an op-ed with our policy analyst, Ross Jackson, about affirmative defense. So in case anybody's watching this and doesn't know what that means, can you explain what an affirmative defense is and what your op-ed was about?
Absolutely. So when you think about these victims, the first thing you don't realize is they're often involved in the criminal justice system. They walk into those doors and they are facing, yet again, a re-victimization of the challenges they went through when they were abused. Why does that happen? Look, prosecutors and law enforcement, they're trying to catch the traffickers. And to do so, they've got to have cooperation from victims. But oftentimes, those victims were coerced into other crimes. Coercion's a big word that, I joke, it sounds good in a policy room, but how does it mean to the actual community you serve? Well, coercion means that they were forced to do things that every day they would never before. That's access financial records, rob stores. It's not just the prostitution charges. It's so much more. And those criminal history records follow these victims into their lives so that they're never able to really escape the offenders and the abuse they had. So here in Texas, you all are taking a big step in the right direction. We've seen it in a few other places, but I know one thing about Texas, y'all like to lead. And this is an opportunity to lead in a way where you are going to give these victims the opportunity in court to prove they were forced into those crimes and to prove that they should not face the penalties and problems and offenses that their abusers deserve. And I'm excited that not only will this help victims, this will help law enforcement take the next step to find those traffickers and get them out of our communities.
100%. I could not have said it any better. So you know that SB 10 was just recently filed for our special session, which is a bill that would provide an affirmative defense for these victims. Right. What would you say to lawmakers about why this needs to be treated with the utmost urgency?
Unfortunately, human trafficking is in the news, and we all know why. There's a first time, when you talk to folks about human trafficking 10, 15 years ago, it was a topic that was difficult to even break through. It's hard to believe that your neighbor or that someone in our communities could be possible of such evil. But now that we know it's real, we can do something about it. And now that we can have the conversation that these terrible crimes are committed, but that there are so many people committed to solving it, we can shine a light in a space that's been dark for too long. And so for lawmakers here in Texas, this is your opportunity to shine that light. It won't just help victims, which is obviously our first goal. It will push traffickers out of Texas and, more importantly, out of our country. When they know they can't take advantage of our victims, they're not going to want to be here anymore. We're going to put them out of business.
So well said. And then one of my other next questions about this bill in particular is, I think that human trafficking and this whole issue is inherently conservative. What would you say to somebody that would maybe look at this bill or look at this affirmative defense and say, that's not conservative?
There's nothing more conservative than the government standing up for the rights of victims, right? The whole role of government is to keep us safe, do so in an efficient way, and protect the vulnerable. Well, that's what we're doing here. We're making sure that our laws recognize the status of our victims and allow them an opportunity to make their case to be heard before our government in a way that represents them. And so there's nothing more conservative than that. And then guess what? We're going to go get those traffickers because that's what we believe. And our truth-based principles, it is we've got to go get the bad guys out of our communities. We're going to do that. And we're going to do that by supporting victims first.
100%. I love that so much. Yeah. So I want to shift focus now back to your state of Georgia. So Right on Crime has done some work in Georgia before, which is great. But now we have like a real permanent presence there now that you're our state director. So tell me a little bit about why you feel like Georgia needs Right on Crime.
Absolutely. So Georgia has been a leader in the state before, in the country, before. And what we're really excited about in the Peach State is we have some of those foundations. In the previous administrations at our state level, we've made sure things like prison programming, support for law enforcement, focusing on improving the clearance records for our law enforcement officers so that they can actually solve crimes, all been there. But what's happened since, unfortunately, the pandemic, like many places, our system wasn't as resourced as it needed to be, and there are advancements we've got and next steps we've got to take. So why does Right on Crime need Georgia? Well, I think Georgia needs Right on Crime a little bit more. And the reason is we have got an opportunity here to reduce barriers to employment, focusing on things like occupational licensing. We've got an opportunity to improve our prison and jail system and make sure that people who go in come out better than when they got there. And so that's our first steps in the state. We have a lot more work to do, and I think there's a real opportunity to have success.
I agree. I want to ask you, just because occupational licensing, it kind of feels like a big term. If somebody doesn't know what that means or why it's important, could you explain that a little bit and why that would help move the needle towards public safety?
Absolutely. and it's one of those things where we get stuck in the policy terms. We don't actually talk about how it affects people. Occupational licensing is essentially that many industries require licenses for people to practice. Think about cutting hair is the best example, but everything from bricklaying to underwater sea welding can require a license. And we want professionals to receive the training and expertise to succeed in their field. What we don't want is people who train in prison to come out and have barriers to that success. And that's what we found across the state of Georgia. We have an opportunity to give those folks who've trained in prison, who have the opportunity to learn this new craft, and then come out and be productive, tax-paying members of our society and successful parts of the community safety picture. We need them to be able to get jobs. Yeah. And if there are license barriers there, and there are still in the Peach State, we've got to remove those to let those folks get to work.
Yeah, I love that. And then when it comes to, you mentioned not only occupational licensing, but prison programming. I think there's a stigma that says that, you know, programmings like this or thoughts like this or ideas like this aren't conservative. They're squishy on crime. But I know you're not squishy on crime. You're a conservative. So tell me about why those issues are, in fact, conservative issues for anybody that maybe can't make that connection.
Well, one of the bedrocks of the work here at Right on Crime, and really across the nation when we talk about conservatives, is public safety. Yeah. But public safety isn't just a buzzword. It actually requires action. It requires planning. It requires process to be successful. Meaning when folks come out of prison, and over 90% of those in Georgia are coming out of prison, they've got to be successful. We've got to give them tools so that they don't return to that life of crime. And if they do, we'll hold them accountable. But it's not fair if we're going to set up a system that doesn't actually provide those tools. And so what we're talking about with prison programming is jobs-based, educational-based. What is the passion that maybe that individual led astray from and deserves to be held accountable for? That's the piece that we separate ourselves from maybe some of the other folks on the other side of the political spectrum. We believe in accountability, but we also believe in a structure that allows for success. So then when that person comes back to the community, they're not part of the problem, they're part of the solution. And I'll tell you, my experience is this: when you give someone the programming and the career that they want and they step out of prison, they also become part of that mentor system that keeps the next generation from getting involved in activities that we all agree need to be held accountable.
Yeah, 100%. That is so great. So it sounds like you've got some big opportunities that you're going to be working on in the state of Georgia. I want to ask, what do you feel like Georgia does really well in the criminal justice system that maybe other states should be looking at as well?
Yeah, I'll say the first thing is we support our law enforcement. And we came back from 2020 and some of the craziness there and said we are going to respect the professions. And I wouldn't even say law enforcement. I'd say the criminal justice system. Yeah. In Georgia, we respect our judges, our prosecutors, our defense attorneys, our police, our sheriffs, and our statewide agencies. And that's where it starts, because unfortunately, there's a recruitment and retention crisis across every state. And certainly we're part of that. But as we restore integrity to the profession, I think Georgia's leading the way, making sure law enforcement, public defenders, prosecutors, judges feel like they're not only respected, but that their careers make a difference in our communities. And that improves those challenges we talked about earlier. So that's what we're doing well. I think we're also really focused on how do we give tools to law enforcement and some of the survivor victim community to be successful. Some of those tools includes funding. Some of those tools include partnerships. We do a great job of talking to one another. But that's not the whole story, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, it sounds like Georgia still has a lot of good, as well as still a lot of work to be done. So I know you're going to be busy. Criminal justice, we have a lot of fun at Right on Crime for sure, but I know working in the criminal justice system can sometimes feel really heavy. So I always like to end our podcast with what makes you feel really positive about the state of criminal justice or what direction we're going in, whether that's your state or the nation as a whole.
Oh, the nation as a whole, that's just a small piece of this puzzle. I'll start with Georgia. I have to say that there are great leaders in our state, from the statewide offices down to your local municipalities. Everybody's pushing and rowing in the same direction. And folks who don't want to focus on public safety, who don't want to support survivors and victims, one thing I'll say is we do such a good job, I think, as a state, but also as a movement of saying we're going to put and lift victims up first. Victims of crime, survivors of crime, survivors of abuse. So Georgia's pushing in that direction, and I think you're going to see us all move in one, voice to make a difference. Now, nationally, we've got some opportunity to do the same thing. Turns out all 50 states don't get along. Turns out Congress likes to move slowly. Who knew? But on the positive end of things, I think what you have seen is that this is an issue that can cut across the political divide, and it can also cut across just the political noise. We have an opportunity to make people safer. I've we've turned a corner post 2020 where we can focus clearly on making people safe and doing it in a way that doesn't take away from the rights of the American people. That's an easy fix. That's a positive. And I know that may not sound as fun as it would outside of a podcast, but I'm telling you, that's what we're going to do over the next 4 years.
I love it. Well, you've got your work cut out for you, Frank. We're so excited that you're part of the team. If anybody wants to keep up with you and your work, where can they find you?
You can find me on X or Twitter or whatever you would formerly like to call it at FRusso15. And then I'm also on Instagram and online at the Right on Crime website. Amazing. I apologize in advance for my sports takes. I will say the rest of the policy takes are great.
No, we're an unapologetic group, even when it comes to sports. So we appreciate you. Thank you for coming all the way to Texas. It's been so fun to chat. And thank you guys for joining us for the Right on Crime podcast. To listen on any more of these issues, check us out on iTunes or Spotify. And you can also go to our website at www.rightoncrime.com. Until next time, see you then.